name's Kelsey, and if you're not a subscriber, you might not know that here in TheSorryGirls, we love budget-friendly design that we achieve through thrifting, upcycling, and DIYing, which brings me to today's video. We're gonna be trying a reupholstery for the very first time. I feel so validated right now, until we start the next project. Haters will say I'm lazy, but I think that's working smart, not hard, you know? Oh my God. How is this too short? What did I do? Who does that? So I have a few DIYs that I want to try with you today, things that I've been putting off around my house. So we're gonna do real reupholstery for the first time pretty much. And also I have a little rug tufting DIY because why not? It was on the DIY list. And maybe let's start with that. So for a team party, we actually did rug tufting, and I knew I wouldn't be able to make use of a rug that small, so I decided that I'd make a pillow front instead. So this is what I have, and it's been sitting around my house for months, wanting to be a pillow. Honestly, I just like laid it over top of the front of a pillow, so it kind of looked like it was a pillow. Like literally I was like, oh yeah, so good, it's a pillow. Oh my God, that looks cute. Maybe that's where it's gonna, I haven't decided where it's gonna live, but maybe it lives right there. Anyways, this is my rug tufting project. So I'm gonna actually make an envelope style pillowcase, aka no zipper. And we actually did this a really long time ago. It's like one of our first tutorials. Look at baby Kelsey and Becky, we're really cute. But that's what we're gonna do today. So like if this is the front of my pillowcase, I'm gonna have two back pieces that look something like this, and they're not gonna be attached there so that the pillow can slip in, like so. So I ended up purchasing half a meter of fabric, but I do always check the thrift store first to see if there's anything there that would work for my project. I looked at skirts, I looked at bedding, and I didn't find anything that I liked, so here we are. But this was on sale for only $2. Can you believe it? Since this is a beginner sewing project, I will give you a beginner sewing tip. If you want to find a perfect straight line in your fabric, you can usually pull on a thread and it will reveal a straight line for you. Since my tufting project is 16.5 inches, I'm going to be cutting out two pieces that are 20 inches wide, basically 16.5 plus seam allowance, by 15.25 inches. Now how I got that last number was the length of the pillowcase divided by 2, plus 3 inches for envelope overlap, plus 4 inches for rolling hem / seam allowance. The math is up on the screen, and all you need to know is that you need two pieces that are big enough to cover the back of your pillow and will overlap about 5 or 6 inches in the middle. Okay, I have my pieces cut, and before I sit down to sew, I do want to roll and pin just one of the long edges on each piece. That's all you need to hem, so let's do that. It's definitely not the most ideal place to sew on this little table, but it will do the job. Here comes the noise monster. Hi, how's your day?
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Am I making too much noise?
This guy has no... I was recording. Not yet.
Bombastic side eye.
Am I the only one that sews and worries about the needle breaking off and then propelling itself into my eyeball? Just me? Okay. I know somebody in the comments is gonna be like, that happened to my friend's mom. And then I will never sew again. So I've hemmed one side of each of these pieces, and now I'm going to lay them wrong sides up and overlap them where the hem edges are. I'm gonna have this overlap be about 5 inches. And then just so that it's not a headache while I'm trying to sew the whole thing together, I'm going to just add some stitches along the edges to hold these in place. So now comes the hard part. This is the part I've been dreading. I think that when I did my rug tufting, I overfilled it a little bit, even though I followed her advice. But see how it's all curling like this? I think that's because there's too much yarn packed into here. Basically what we're gonna do now is put the good sides together so that I'm looking at the back. And then I'm gonna try to pin it and sew it as close as I can so that we don't see any of this kind of backing fabric. So with the good sides together, I'm just gonna start with pinning up one of the edges. And I have the envelope portion of the back panel in the middle. Okay, buddy boy. I've gotten us this far. The rest is up to you. I believe in you. I believe in you. Okay. Where's my testy strip? Where's my testy strip? For this first stitch, I'm actually setting my length of stitch to the highest, just so I can do a loose stitch, turn it inside out, and then see if I need to pull out any yarns. I'm really worried about the yarny bits getting caught in the seam. Coming to the big corner. Okay, so I've sewn up one side. I think it's probably safest to flip this inside out and see how it looks to some degree, if this is possible. Don't know. Okay, so if you pull it back, you can see some of the white, but the yarn does cover it. Oh, yeah, I kind of want to get closer than that, eh? Okay, let's keep going. So I set that time-lapse setting to like way too fast, but here are some frames of intense sewing and yarn poking if you missed them. So I have it all sewn up and let's flip her inside out. So I think that this was a win. Are we proud? Because, well, I am proud. I don't really care if you're proud of me or not, but I'm really happy with it. Yay! I gotta send it to the girl at the fabric store because when I was telling her about this project and I had the rug tufting, she was so excited. I feel so validated right now. Until we start the next project. So my next project you might have actually seen me reference in my home reno regrets video. I got this second-hand ottoman and it's a little green. It's a little stained and not stain resistant for the amount of use it gets. And I also feel like it's a little small for the space. I am very grateful for this ottoman because it helped me realize that I do want an ottoman here. I think it just is a nice piece to have in this kind of weird entryway that doesn't really have a purpose, but the ottoman makes it feel grounded. But let's swap one secondhand ottoman for another secondhand ottoman that I found on Facebook Marketplace the other day. Oh yeah, and this has no storage. Okay, it's just a little bit bigger. It was $80 and it has storage, which I can always use some more storage in this house. So the issue is that I think this bluey gray velvet is not the right color for this space, and overall velvet is just not a very stain resistant or durable material. Now I did get a quote for how much this would cost to get it professionally reupholstered, and that came in at almost $1,400. Before I go shopping, I'm gonna figure out some rough measurements so I know how much fabric I need to buy. So when you look at the piece that I'm recovering, you'll see that there's some piping along 3 of the edges. This just makes a cleaner edge. It makes a nice place for the seam to sit, from what I can tell. And it's something I definitely want to incorporate while I'm recovering it. When I looked up how to make piping, it doesn't look that hard. It looks like I'd need a piping foot for my sewing machine. I'd need the piping rope. But the biggest issue is the amount of fabric it would take. Because I'm doing rounded edges and not necessarily just straight piping, I would want to cut on the bias of the fabric, meaning that that's like a lot of wasted fabric. and just a lot of expense as well. So I think I need to find pre-made piping, which they do have at fabric stores and even ribbon stores. But the problem is finding the piping and the fabric and making sure it all matches. Although some people do like mix match piping and fabric, and I now know why they do that, because you probably want to buy your piping over making it, unless you really have a specific pattern that you're going for. This is my first time at this fabric store and I am into it. Okay, I don't know about you, but buying fabric is so nerve-wracking because you're like, it's expensive, and if you don't buy enough, it can really screw you up, and then you have to buy even more. I got this fabric, this piping, and yes, I went with the classic green, but that's because there is a chair in my living room that I want to recover. We're starting with first steps, the ottoman. Second step, the chair, but for that one, I want to do it a little bit more of an interesting color, maybe a pattern, so I needed to keep the ottoman simple. But wow, I've spent the whole day fabric shopping and I'm glad to have finally found something. And piping, because I really wasn't ready to make it or spend all of the money and time to buy fabric and cut it on a bias, so really happy about this. This is the win of the day. Who knew? Let's go recover an ottoman, shall we? I think someone on my street stole one hubcap from like every car because I noticed I was missing a hubcap, and so were a few other cars. Who does that? How the heck do you reupholster something? That's a good question. Since I'm a beginner at this, I would say this project is beginner friendly and we're gonna figure it out together. I'm gonna make sure that I have lots of pictures of my piece, and if I wasn't recording this YouTube video, I would even record myself taking it apart just so that I can reference it and know how to put it back together. Where's my little crowbar when I need one? Genius. Next, it's deconstructing. As I go, I'm taking more pictures, labeling what pieces of the ottoman and fabric went where, and writing out the steps of disassembly so that I can reverse it in order to reconstruct it later. The goal here is to keep the fabric pieces intact because once I seam rip them, I can trace them onto my new fabric and cut out the exact pieces. Okay, so I just removed one of the inside panels. I think that took me about 30 minutes, and this is what I have. I tried to be really careful because I'm going to be tracing out all these pieces of fabric onto my new fabric in order to have exactly the same pieces. But I had time to think while I was ripping that out. I'm gonna be using this for like shoe storage and seasonal shoe storage. So I'm kind of like, it doesn't really make sense for the inside to be fully fabric, and just the ratio of time it's taking me to do the inside versus the outside, it's just like not adding up for me. So I actually think we have leftover paint from when Becky painted the inside of the storage room. It's like the perfect dark olive green color. I'm thinking I paint the inside of this green to avoid using the additional fabric, to avoid recreating all of these panels just for something that you're never gonna see, and also where I'm putting shoes. Haters will say I'm lazy, but I think that's working smart, not hard, you know? Wait, yeah, work smart, not hard. And doing that means I don't have to rip out the panels carefully because I will not be copying the shape onto my new fabric. I can do it a little bit faster, which would be nice. My fingies are hurting. Okay, as you can see, that literally took me days. Also, getting the upholstery staple remover tool was very necessary. Like, do not attempt this unless you're gonna get that tool. But I am really happy with how it's going. My piece is now naked and I have saved the fabric to use as a template. So in order to use these pieces as a template, a lot of them aren't actually sewn together, so I'll be able to put those right onto my fabric. But for the pieces that are sewn together, such as the big top piece, I'm gonna need to steam rip that so that it's in pieces.
Another tedious task.
I want to be cutting out my pieces exact to the essentially pattern, unless it looks like when it was upholstered, it might have been pulled tight, stapled, and then the excess fabric cut off. You can kind of tell that might have been the case here because the ends are really jagged. So in that scenario, I'm gonna make sure to leave a little bit of extra room because I'm gonna want that extra room when I'm pulling and stapling my upholstery. Okay, so I have all of my pieces cut out, and there's actually not much sewing I need to do other than the top piece and then a few seams to get the length to go around. That's all I'm sewing. Everything else is kind of put together when it gets stapled onto the frame. So let's get sewing. First up, I'm sewing a few pieces together to make up the side portion of my Ottoman lid. I'm going to sew together the Ottoman lid slipcover by pinning the sides to the giant circle. I'm doing this by putting the good sides together but also adding the piping in between with the nice edge of the piping facing inside of the circle. It's easy to tell if you're doing this right by just flipping it inside out to see how it will look. I'm swapping my regular sewing foot for a zipper foot so that I can get as close to the piping as possible. I definitely did not know we had this while I was sewing that pillow because that would have come in handy. Okay, so I just finished my first ever piping job, and there are a few places where I didn't put the piping in enough, but I'm just gonna fix up those areas and then do another piping seam along the bottom with some material to pull it and staple it under. And then I think we're gonna be ready to get back to our Ottoman structure. This is how I dealt with joining the beginning and the end of the piping. So peeling back the casing fabric on one end of the piping, I lined up the rope to where the other piping rope begins and then cut off any excess, making sure to not cut off the casing fabric. We're then gonna fold in the raw edges of the extra casing fabric and wrap that around the beginning side of the piping and rope. Once it's sewn into the seam, it will hold it into place and it will look seamless from the outside. Okay, so it's not perfect, but I did make a giant pillow, guys. I can't really return to the studio because Rochelle is knee deep in cutting travertine for Becky's bathroom makeover. So I'm just getting this today and I'll see you tomorrow and we will just keep going. Reupholstery, day 10. Feels like it. I came in today determined to finish this project. It is the final day of working on this Ottoman. I honestly don't even have time to say hi to you guys. Let's get to it. Ow! I just landed with my hand on this. Okay, the first thing I'm gonna do is be wrapping the base of the Ottoman in my fabric and then hammering in this toothy thing. Okay, actually I Googled it. It's called an upholstery tack strip. And I just took this off of the deconstructed Ottoman and hopefully it will work again. Oh my God. What? How is this too short?
Oh no!
What did I do? How did this happen? That's such a piss off. Wait, I think that was my scrap fabric. I think this is the panel. Hold on, hold on. Come on. Whew, okay. Crisis avoided. So like most reupholstering, you're gonna need a tool like this. I call it a staple gun. Technically this is a staple gun, although to me, that's not giving staple gun, that's giving like handheld stapler. Technically this is a compression drive, crown stapler, but it shoots staples into things. Making sure I'm aligned with one of the wood supports of the ottoman, I'm puncturing the fabric, rotating it over to cover the raw edges and face the teeth inwards. And after I cut off any excess, I hammer the upholstery tack strip into position to hide the staples that hold the beginning of the panel in place. Such a professional and actually easy finish. Okay, I can come back to this. I do still have to do piping around the bottom, so I have lots of time to refine this, but let's flip this over so that I can start stapling the top edge. I'm gonna be copying the same pleat structure that the original ottoman used. For the insides here, since I can't fit my compressor in here, I'm using a good old staple gun and then kind of just hammering them in since they don't fully go all the way in. Then I'm just stapling on some more piping as a detail around the bottom, and I'm hammering on some felt feet since I want my ottoman to sit lower to the ground and not on the legs that it came with. Next, I have to staple a few parts on the lid and then reassemble all of the pieces. Okay, very last thing, to finish this ottoman, I need a few things from the storage room. Storage room green. Like, are you seeing how perfect this is? And I have leftover paint, like, it's all coming up, Kelsey. And also, anyone feeling like the storage room maybe needs a little bit of a facelift? Me and my friends might be on that. We might do something about it. With the leftover bendy plywood, I'm measuring and cutting it to size and priming both that piece and the inside of the ottoman. And then once that's dry, we're hitting it with the dark olive green. Okay, let's get this ottoman back to my house. Look how good she looks in this space, and I definitely love how many shoes it holds. I bet you're wondering how much this project cost me, and other than a few days of my life and some sore fingies, I spent $101.05 on fabric and piping and $17.54 on staples, totaling $118.59 versus the $1,389.90 I was quoted by the professionals. Subscribe for saving money and let me know if you've tried reupholstery before. And if you want to see another time I avoided spending thousands of dollars, you can check out this IKEA hack here. Today is all about finding a realistic and affordable storage solution, not to mention aesthetic. I have not been able to find it on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm refusing to buy it new.